Welcome. I'm Jessica Tejan, and this is the Evolving to Exceptional podcast, where we talk about reaching peak performance in our workplaces, homes, and communities so that we can live our best life possible, an exceptional life. Welcome back to the Evolving to Exceptional podcast. You've got myself, Jessica Tejan, as your host, and Meldina Alabasic, who is my newest employee, who is going to be joining us on these podcast episodes. So welcome, Meldina.
I am so glad to be here, guys. Really looking forward to it.
So today I want to talk about something that became really apparent to me this week. And a while back, actually tried to put in place an HR mastermind or offer space for HR professionals to come kind of talk about the challenges they're experiencing, what they're facing right now, and share those and brainstorm or look at ideas together. And as I was waiting to see what HR professionals came or signed up for that, I also started to connect with a lot of different HR professionals, leaders, talent management folks, and various CEOs or leaders within small businesses. I also started to look at a number of articles. And one of the themes that I saw that was so apparent was how burned out HR and talent management people are right now, and how significantly they are exhausted from the challenges that they've experienced, over the last few years. And so I really wanted to spend some time on this episode today talking about those challenges, that burnout, where it's coming from, and what are some of the things that we could do or should do around it to remedy that. And what are some of the things that happen when we're stuck kind of in that burnout state? And so when you think about the challenges that HR has faced, so according to SHRM, 42% of HR teams are struggling under the weight of too many projects and responsibilities. And when you think about it, HR and talent management have been responsible for literally thinking about all the people in the organization, what's best for them, what they need, communicating with them, the culture, the performance, the engagement, that the responsibility, although shared amongst the organization ideally, really lays on the shoulders of those HR and talent management professionals and leaders. And throughout the pandemic, and you and I know this firsthand, Meldina, there were significant challenges on these teams because we had to deal with corporate policies and legal issues and employee challenges, in some cases downsizing and trying to maintain culture. We had to figure out how to recruit, onboard, engage, and offboard employees remotely. And we had to find all new resources, tools, and training to make the organization effective in this completely new environment. And now, most recently, the labor shortages are causing HR professionals to really be faced with just endless lists of positions that they can't seem to fill, or they're struggling to get filled because there's just not enough people. So I don't know about you, Meldina, but it seems like the theme is that there's just a lot of burnout. What have you observed, or what have you seen?
No, I totally agree, Jessica. I mean, I think we have been running on the last 2 years. If the pandemic wasn't enough, right? We came out of the pandemic or somewhat there with just even more challenges. And in my experience, it feels like HR leaders are just exhausted by the amount of changes that are happening at an exponentially high rate, right? It's happening a lot faster. Again, we just got, we got through the pandemic and having to shift everybody remote to now getting folks back in the office. Some are still hybrid and learning how to adjust our cultures so that we can, maintain high levels of engagement and performance and satisfaction with employees. So I've seen it all around HR and in all workplaces that HR folks are just, I mean, they are beat up for lack of a better term.
Well, and when we were just at the MU Health keynote, I did a keynote speech at their leadership conference, and they talked about, or the CEO talked about, that they had 360 nursing positions open open,
That's
and
insane.
that they were planning to hire 1,000 nursing positions. And that number just blew my mind of how complex those challenges, the labor shortage challenges really are. And knowing, and I'm actually not an HR talent management person who likes recruiting. In fact, I really don't. Which is why I hired other
Ditto.
people to do it. Um, but to of what it takes to do that, of what it takes to find, source, interview, hire candidates to fill positions. And I know I've watched, my husband's a manager, and him trying to fill positions, and it's been months of trying hiring and then having them, resign before they even start, take another offer before they even start. It just seems like an endless list of challenges.
Yeah. Jessica, that actually brings up a question that I'd like your kind of input on. We've heard a lot about the Great Resignation, right? So lots of people are exiting their current organizations, trying to find better opportunities. How is it that we don't have enough people if there's, people are quitting their jobs by the masses? What's kind of attributed to that labor shortage? What do you
Well,
think?
I think it's interesting, and others have said this too, but that it's called the people have been calling it the Great Resignation, but it's not really. It's just the Great Reset or the Great Move. People aren't quitting to sit at home. At least I don't think they are. I think that they are quitting workplaces that aren't serving them or aren't serving their lives the way that they would like them to be, and identifying new ways to work or identifying new workplaces that align better with their values and what's important to them and what matters to them. And that makes things really difficult for those that exist, whether you're in, and this message really could go not just to HR, or talent management, but also I think, for those that are CEOs or leaders in small businesses that don't even have an HR department. I can't even imagine trying to hire and staff and manage those challenges, in some of those smaller organizations that really don't have the resources or aren't quite big enough to have resources dedicated in this space.
Wow, that's very interesting, and I think that's a good kind of segue into our topic today too, around exhaustion and how HR is feeling in particular about the challenges that they're facing today.
Yeah, and so as I was thinking about this topic, and as it came up, and it came up for me too, I'm not in a place of burnout, but I certainly was at this time a year ago. In fact, at this time a year ago, you're not going to believe this, but it's been almost 1 year since, I was responsible for IT when we experienced a ransomware attack, and in my prior organization, and the stress of going through that challenge amidst everything else that was going on was huge, and I really did burn out hard. And one of the things that happens, I think, when we're in that state, when we're trapped in that survival almost, state, our mindset, state of being and mindset, is that we lose perspective. And so I think what I'm seeing, or I think what's happening is that, those that are in these positions in responsible for these functions are kind of trapped in the hustle. They're trying to get through their to-do lists, executing millions of tasks that they're trying to get done. And so it makes it really difficult to slow down and step back and see a bigger picture, when you've got all those tasks or all those challenges. I don't know about you, but I can really relate to that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. A year ago, going through that ransomware attack, it was incredible just how much time had I put in without even realizing it, right? I was just in a survival mode. We just needed to make sure that things were running smoothly and how much time and effort I put into it. And by the end of it, I took a step back and said, "Holy cow, like we had invested so much time and energy into this and it was great." It was I mean, we were able to overcome it and I think we were doing such a great job at overcoming it, but I didn't sense that feeling of burnout until after the fact, right? And so I was just ready to go, 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 and just move on to the next thing. And to your point, just keep crossing things off that to-do list. But I had not realized just kind of the mental toll that had taken on myself, and how that was impacting my performance moving forward beyond that point, right?
Well, and in some cases, I think it's almost been like moving from one crisis to the next
Yes.
over the last few years. And not necessarily just for those in the HR talent management space, but really any space, right? There's been kind of one big challenge after another, but especially for those that are really helping with people in the businesses to go through those. And I think you get into that high adrenaline state, right? So the
Mhm.
adrenaline's flowing, and that's where you lose that track of time. And unless we slow down, unless we stop, unless we reset our nervous systems, unless we take that break or understand our experiences, it's almost like we're stuck on rinse repeat, right? This has happened. Okay, what's the next crisis going to be? And I found myself literally just waiting for what's the next crisis, because there's going to be another one. There's
Mhm.
always another one. And especially in HR, there's always some employee who's done something stupid, or some termination that you've got to do, or some type of drama that's happening, or some type of training that's needed. There's just kind of always something going on. When we were part of an HR group, I remember we used to joke about the HR bubble and like having that confidentiality bubble to talk about some of those things that are so challenging when you're working in this space.
Yeah, so Jessica, there you talked a little bit about, a crisis being kind of what fueled our burnout in that moment or the next challenge. But those aren't necessarily the only things, right, that can fuel burnout. What are some of the other things in an organization that can make people feel burnt out?
That's a great point. So actually, I pulled before this that a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, laid out kind of six different aspects. One is workload or overload, which definitely I think comes into play. So high demands, not enough resources, lack of time, employees or equipment. Those types of things really can lead to that feeling of burnout. And I got to ask, what does that remind you of?
Oh
The
gosh. The millions of things that we had to get done, right, in our prior organization. I mean, we were a small team, but we had really big goals and very big dreams for ourselves and our team, and we wanted to achieve them, right? That was something that we prided ourselves on. We wanted to do a good job, and we wanted to just achieve the most that we possibly could. And so we definitely saw a lot of this. And some of it was self-inflicted too. I think that's important to kind of talk about too, is when you are a team or a person that is focused on achieving a lot, and you're an executor and you love crossing those things off your to-do list, you want to take on that work because it's satisfying when you get it done, right? So it's something that, unfortunately is self-inflicted sometimes.
Well, and I think for me, I also always it always brings me back to, um, some of Cy Wakeman's material on a lack of accountability or falling into that hole, because there's always going to be those challenging circumstances, and but remembering that they actually do lead to burnout. That, like, even though they are unchangeable and we have to figure out how to manage around them, that if we exist in that state for too long, it really can contribute to the lack of burnout. Another element is control or autonomy, like really feeling like you've got control over the job and what you're trying to accomplish. And I think often for those in this space, that can be really difficult, because you are literally reacting and responding to the needs of the organization. And you're, even if you are your own department, you're kind of accountable to or responsible to all the other departments, which I think can be exhausting in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, another part of that is because there's with change, right? Things are changing so quickly nowadays. It's that lack of expectations, I think, that makes us feel like we don't have that sense of control or autonomy. And so I think getting clear on expectations is major here. And when we don't have those expectations, when we don't know what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to do it, it can lead to that feeling of being burnt out and being exhausted by your job.
Well, and I think what goes along, or what that makes me think of too, is that um, for those in this space, understanding what they what that HR or talent management group has control over or has the ability to make decisions around, because a lot of times, or at least this was my experience, we had to make decisions with the approval of the leadership team or the president or whomever is in charge of all of the functional areas in the organization. And so, if you're not sure how far your authority extends or how much autonomy you have in terms of making decisions, that can cause a lot of excess stress and frustration, just from that lack of clarity around those decisions and the decision making and what those expectations are.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next one's a big one. I think probably the biggest is feedback. And that a lack of rewards or recognition for a job well done. What do you think about this one?
I think this one is just super important, right? Yeah, I mean, if you're not getting any sort of feedback, whether that's positive or negative, you're just kind of running on that hamster wheel. It's just an endless cycle. You're just going to keep going and keep going and keep going, and you're not getting anywhere, right? You're just
Mhm.
spinning yourself into a hole, digging yourself deeper into that hole. And so for me, feedback is probably one of the most important, and has led personally to my own feelings of burnt out because you're just endlessly going on that to-do list, you're working on things, and when you don't have that recognition or that, hey, you did a great job there, or just someone noticing all that time and effort that you're putting in, it makes you feel like, what am I doing this for, right? What's the point?
Well, and just for a minute, forget getting good recognition at all. I think oftentimes, I think we just had a customer, a client of ours, talk about how she feels like she's always the bad guy,
Yeah.
and that she's the one that has to bring these changes and force these changes. HR is considered the police officer. I can count the number of I couldn't even count the number of jokes I've heard about, like, don't do that, HR's here, don't let HR see you, or whatever. It's one of the reasons I don't love the term HR, actually. Um, but I think, it can end up feeling like you're the bad guy. You're the one that is raining on everybody's parade, or is frustrating the other managers or leaders, asking them to do things that maybe they don't feel like they want or need to be doing. And so not only are you maybe not getting positive recognition or feedback, but you might actually be getting negative feedback. And I think also when it comes to this function, most of the time, HR talent management reports directly to the president or the CEO, and they're busy. They're challenged themselves. And so, the thinking of giving recognition to that space, just always isn't always there. It's really HR who's thinking about encouraging everybody to give recognition, and not maybe the other way around. Another element is workplace community. Employees not getting along or receiving needed support. Um, and I think that this is underrated a lot, of how much having those relationships or getting along with the people that you're interacting with impacts whether it's a frustrating experience or a positive experience.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's part of Gallup's engagement, Q12. One of the questions there is around having a best friend at work. And so I think it speaks volumes that Gallup sees that as one of the drivers of employee engagement, and how important it really is for everyone in the organization to have that support and to feel like they're getting along with their with others and having those relationships, because without it, it can feel lonely and definitely fuel that burnout.
Well, and if you think about for smaller organizations that maybe have only one or two HR talent management resources, having that community is probably is even more difficult, I think. And being able to share experiences or get feedback or input. I know for me, having an outside HR talent management group that could help support me and give me ideas and thoughts was really impactful to me. I got a lot of mentorship from other HR talent management leaders outside of my immediate organization or community because that helped give me the support that I needed. And I could talk to them about those challenges um, with it being a safe space, with it
Mhm.
being not that I'm going to other employees in the organization around a sensitive topic, but I'm interacting with other professionals who understand the challenges that I'm facing. The next item is fairness. And so standards not being applied fairly or workers not receiving equitable treatment. I think what brings in mind here for me, because fairness is tough. I remember I grew up with the statement, well, life's not fair. It just isn't. Better get used to it now. But is maybe like the inclusion piece
Mm.
and feeling like it's an environment of inclusive opportunity, inclusive experiences. So maybe not that it's all equal, but that there is a um, sense of appreciation uh, for those experiences.
Yeah, and I actually just recently heard about someone's experience in HR where they felt like there were certain times they were expected to maybe not necessarily punish, but take some disciplinary action against certain employees, and other times they were told to kind of back off, and maybe that, it's the expectations they had, right? They were kind of flying under the radar. Everyone knew in the organization that these were folks that were just not going to really perform well, and it became accepted behavior, right? And so that was something that this person struggled with as an HR leader, not being able to treat everyone fairly, and didn't really understand
Mm.
how that was coming about.
Yeah, and I think that the integrity piece of that can be really
Absolutely.
key too. So the last one is value or meaning, not feeling as though your work is valued or is important. And man, that can cut deep, right? That like cuts to the bone when you feel like what you're doing doesn't really matter. Nobody really cares. Nobody realizes how much work it is or how hard it is or how challenging it is. And or it's not having an impact. It's not really bringing any value. And I can only imagine the exhaustion or the feeling of that when you're constantly trying to source a position or fill a position and it's not getting filled and then you get questioned, well, how come, why is it taking so
Mhm.
long, are you calling enough people, are you reviewing enough resumes. And I remember coaching some of our folks around that challenge around getting questioned. You're doing a lot of work, but it may not have the results. It may take longer than others would like it to.
Yeah, and I think with HR in particular, I think with folks in this group, it can feel like, because you're not on the front lines, right? You're not making money necessarily for the company. You're not into sales. You're not creating the product. You're not delivering the services. Can often feel like you're not valued. You're not, the work that you're doing essentially is going unnoticed because of that. You're not out there generating money necessarily or directly, for the company. And so I think HR folks tend to struggle with that. That's something that I've heard, in talking to some of my HR friends is, when there's downsizing in companies or something like that, HR tends to kind of get hit. I feel like, so, one of the first groups that does get hit with that because they don't, the value is not as apparent as some of the other groups and organizations. So I definitely have seen and heard a lot about this one from HR HR folks.
Yeah, it's non-revenue
Yes,
generating, right? So it's
exactly.
not necessarily as valued, which is interesting because almost all revenue stems from the performance of people and the results that we get from our people. And I think that what all these examples point to is, I think there's some things that leaders can do. I think as leaders in organizations, you've got to ask yourself the question, have you really taken care of your HR and talent management professionals? And are you just expecting them to keep taking care of you and of the business and of everyone else? Or have you given them the support in the space that they really need? Have you taken the steps that can really help them and give them what they need to be successful? And if you haven't done that, what can you do about it? What are some steps that you can do to ensure that these resources don't completely burn out or worse, leave? I've seen a lot of HR professionals moving positions, shifting. I was on a Women at Work summit last week, and I saw all these comments of women in the chat actually around talking about the challenges and the exhaustion and the lack of feeling valued and the frustration and all the pieces of burnout, all the indicators of burnout were right there, were really apparent. And so, as hard as it is to fill those positions with your talent management or HR resource, it's going to get a whole lot harder if you lose them. So what are you doing to really ensure that those resources are not burning out? And I got this email yesterday actually that was um from Brene Brown. It was just on her overall email list. I'm a big Brene Brown fan. And she opened the email with this quote: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. That quote's by Viktor Frankl. And then she went on and she shared in her email, the past couple of years have been hard, personally and professionally, and I found that space closing in on itself again. My responses have started sliding too close to the stimuli. I'm tired and the pause is suffering. I can't let that happen to me or our organization. We need breath and space. And her email was really a communication about her organization taking a pause this summer and really taking some time to breathe and she's literally taking a 13-week sabbatical and having her team take breaks and shutting some things down so that they can kind of recover from all that stimuli, from all of those things that kind of trigger us. And I always love the way that she describes, the pause, and that, when things happen, making sure you pause before you respond so that you respond with more intention. And it gets really hard to do that when you're in a constant firefighting battle kind of state, working through to-do lists, trying to fill positions, trying to keep things going, trying to get all the things done. And not really being able to take that pause or take that breath. And I think what came to mind, or what as I thought about that, what came to mind was that maybe we need to slow down, to really take a break, step back, and see a different perspective. If you think about what Earth looks like from Mars, right? That's kind of a thing that people talk about. What does Earth look like from Mars? When we aren't up close, our perspective changes entirely. How we see things changes entirely. And I also like to think about, when, and I don't know if you've got any memories of this, but of being somewhere when you were a child and then going back as you were an adult, and you're like, oh, I thought that was so big. Like that house seems so big, or that playground was so huge. It looks so small now,
Yeah.
right? And it's a completely, you just see it from a completely different set of eyes. And I think that the challenge that we have when it comes to these changing workplaces, and mark my words, workplaces are changed forever. They're never going to go back to the way that they were before. And if we want our HR, our talent management, our people leaders to be making good decisions, if we want our people leaders to be making these good decisions about what to do with people and with performance and with our programs, then we've got to give them the space to breathe, to reflect, to gain perspective, to think about things from a space that isn't within the hustle, right? And so, I think that it's so important that we take this time, and I say that for me too. Because and this was an analogy that came to me today, as silly as it might be, when we're trying to clean up a mess, if there's a mess of crumbs on the floor, we can get focused on trying to brush away each individual crumb, or we can stand back. And I literally have watched my girls do this. I have twin 2-year-old girls, right? I'm trying to clean up like one little piece at a time. Or we stand up, we step back, we get a broom and we clean it all up, right? We can just do it in one sweep. And I want you to think about that as you're listening to this episode. I want you to think about that in terms of whether you're in HR or you're the leader of a business, of your people, and how to give them that perspective so that they can come in with a bigger solution. So they can come in to all those little challenges that you're experiencing in the workplace, all those crumbs that are all over the place, with a broom, with a bigger sweeping change that can make a real difference to your workplace, that if you don't give them the time to step back, they're going to be stuck just trying to tackle each individual little piece one by one. And so as we kind of wrap up this episode, I want to highlight what we're going to be doing at Evolving to Exceptional this summer. And we just pulled this together, and I think it's going to be really powerful, is that we are actually going to do an Evolving Workplaces series of webinars. And it is a summer of free support for HR people everywhere. HR people or CEOs, leaders, anybody who is focused on how to evolve our workplaces into, and how to solve the challenges that we're experiencing in our workplaces through evolution, through new ideas and new approaches that come from gaining perspective. And so what we're going to do is we're going to host a series of these webinars. So every week we're going to release a topic, one of the topics on this podcast. Meldine and I will talk about them. We'll share about them. Then we will hold a webinar that is a space for anybody who wants to join to jump in and share their perspective, share their experience, share their ideas or their challenges, or just discuss and debate some of these innovative new approaches to workplaces. And so what I'll be doing is, and I am a high input person, I love to read. So I will be reading all of the books and articles and information that's out there on these new strategies and approaches, and bringing these to the HR resources and the people that are passionate about this topic, so that hopefully we can come up with and talk about some of these new ways to execute and evolve our workplaces in order to be more effective in the future, in order to do these things more effectively and achieve better results as our organizations. So we will include in the show notes, or you can go to our website, evolvingtoexceptional.com, to get signed up for those free webinars. And I encourage you, sign up for them. And if you are an executive leader, give your HR people some space. Give them some time to step back from the to-do list, to step back from the many things they're trying to accomplish and get done, and breathe and think about these challenges differently. I can almost guarantee you that they're going to bring back to you better solutions and better results if you give them this a little bit of extra time, this little bit of space to recover from everything they've been experiencing. So look forward to getting to engage with you all, getting to talk about all of these topics. I am Jessica Tejan here at Evolving to Exceptional. We love to hear from you, so please don't hesitate to reach out on social media or on our website and continue the conversation about how we can evolve our workplaces for the future. Have a great rest of your day.